Hey Joel, ready for the second part of the story of Abraham?
Oh yeah, we were talking about that last week, weren't we?
Yup, and we left on an important part.
You're going to have to remind me.
Really? Okay, here it goes. Abram was a man who lived long ago in the city of Haran, in the land we now call Turkey. God said, "Hey, follow me, and I'll make you a great nation and give you lots of land." Abraham said, "Cool," so he followed God.
Travis?
Then he went to Egypt, where he told the Pharaoh that his wife, Sarai, was actually his sister. And when that went bad, they got kicked out of Egypt, and they had to go back to the land God was going to give them.
No, Travis, I didn't mean...
I'm almost done, Joel. Then, Abraham's nephew Lot had to leave because their servants started fighting over stuff. But then war broke out and Lot got captured. Abram rode and saved the day. After that, God made a covenant. That's a special kind of promise, Joel. That promise was that Abraham was gonna have a son, and that son would have kids, and they would have kids, and they would grow until they were mighty nations that would rule over the lands that God was promising them. Is that enough of a reminder, Joel?
Yeah, that's great, Travis.
Cool, let's listen in to the rest of the story.
What was that?
I think it's called a recap.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, well, picking it up from there, Abram and Sarai, though they had been trying, still didn't have any children.
Abram, I've been thinking.
Really? What about, my love?
This whole promise God made to you about having a son, he didn't say anything about me being the mother of this child?
Wait, you think you're going to die?
I mean, hopefully not for a long time, but maybe God wants you to have a baby with someone other than me. If it's not working through me, then maybe you should get another wife.
Hold on. Was Sarai saying she wanted a divorce?
No, things in that part of the world were a little different than they are today where we live. Back then, men could marry multiple wives if they were able to provide for them.
So, you think I should start dating again? Huh.
That'll take too long. My Egyptian maidservant Hagar is single and ready to mingle. Let me introduce you to.
Something tells me this isn't going to turn out good.
That would be pretty accurate. After Abram married Hagar, she had a baby boy, and God had plans for him.
You shall name him Ishmael, which means God hears, because I have heard his mother's suffering. He will be a man like a wild donkey, untamable and strong. He will have many enemies, but I will make him the father of 12 great rulers, and he will be a great nation. But he's not the son I promised you, Abram. Another is on the way.
We'll be right back, right after this. We now return to the story of Abraham.
Hold on. Abraham? I thought his name was Abram.
It was, but God decided to change both Abram and Sarai's names to Abraham and Sarah as part of his promise to them.
Okay, weird, but you're trying to tell a story, so I'll look into that on my own time.
Much appreciated. One hot day, Abraham looked out from his tent and saw 3 men standing nearby. He instantly knew that God was visiting him, and he ran out to greet them.
My lord, please, stay here and rest under this tree. I'll have my servants come and wash your feet, and I'll get you something to eat.
Very well.
Do as you say.
Right. I'll be right back. Sarah, I need you to bake bread. A lot of it. We have visitors. I'm going to get some beef and cheese.
Sure. Whatever you say.
After serving his guest, Abraham stood under the tree while they ate.
Where is your wife, Sarah?
Sarah? Oh, she's in the tent, staying under the sun and all.
I will be stopping by your place again this time next year, and Sarah will have a baby boy.
Me? A son? Right. Abraham and I are so old by now. My frail little old lady body couldn't hope to have any children.
Why did Sarah laugh? And why does she think she's too old to have a child?
Is anything too hard for God?
I will return to you next year.
And Sarah will have
a son.
Why are you laughing, Princess?
I wasn't. Why would you think I was laughing?
Because you were.
Yeah, well, can I get those dishes for you?
After this, Abraham and the visitors talked a bit more before they headed off on important business. But even after they left, their words stuck with Sarah and Abraham. God wasn't going to back down from his promise. He would give Sarah a son, and because it was so unlikely, everyone would know that God had made it happen. We now return to the story of Abraham.
You wanted to talk to me, Abraham?
Yes, my love. We're going into the territory of Gerar, and the king there is a great lover of beauty.
Honey, I'm 90 years old.
So? You're still beautiful. Just tell the king you're my sister so he doesn't kill me to marry you.
Wait a minute. He's doing this again?
Yep.
Even though it got them kicked out of Egypt?
Yep.
Did it go horribly wrong like the first time?
Kind of. God struck the household of the king with disease. God told the king why. The king asked Abraham, "What's the deal?"
And then the king kicked Abraham out of his land?
Not exactly.
Look, Abraham, God told me you were his prophet and that you would pray that my household would live if I gave you your wife back. I don't want any trouble with you or your God. Here she is. Here are gifts to show you I want peace. And I say, let's set up a treaty so that your family and my people will not deal falsely with each other.
Sounds good to me.
And so they made a treaty, and Abraham lived in those lands for a long time.
But what about Sarah's baby? I mean, I know God said it was coming, but you haven't mentioned it.
Don't worry. Sarah did indeed have a baby boy, and they named him Isaac, which means laughter.
God has given me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. I'm an old lady with a baby. Who could ever see that coming?
And I bet Abraham was pretty happy too.
He was. He loved Isaac with all his heart. Isaac was the child God had been promising him for years, and now in his hands was the fulfillment of that promise. But what happened next would be the true test of how much Abraham trusted God. And now the final chapter in the Kids Corner's presentation of the story of Abraham.
Abraham,
I'm here, Lord.
I want you to take your son Isaac to a mountain I will show you. I want you to sacrifice him to me.
Okay, hold it. That's not in the Bible.
Yes, it is. Genesis 22.
You're telling me that God wanted Abraham to kill his own son, the one that he loved with all his heart and had been waiting his whole life for? How is that loving? How is that like God at all?
It does seem odd, but just keep listening and we might get some answers to your questions.
Isaac, wake up. We've got to go. I need to make a sacrifice to God.
All right, Dad.
As they made their way up the mountain, Isaac noticed something.
Hey, Dad, I think we are missing something. We've got the hot coals and the firewood. We've got the knife, but what about, the sacrifice? Where's the lamb?
God will give us a lamb, my son. We're here. Let's build the altar.
After the altar was built, Abraham then laid the firewood on top.
Still no lamb, Dad.
Yeah, I know. Son, do you trust me?
Yeah, sure, Dad.
God's asked me to sacrifice you to him. He's made so many promises concerning you and your future, and though I've messed up a lot in my life, he has never broken one of them. I have to trust him, no matter what he asks me to do.
All right, Dad, if you're sure, let's do this.
Lord, this is my son, the one you gave me. I give him back to you now.
Stop. Do not harm the boy. You have shown that you trust and respect me because you have not kept him from me.
Dad, look! A lamb, caught by its horns in that bush. God did provide a lamb, just like you said.
Just like I said. Whew. Thank you, Lord, for sparing my son.
Wow, so God was just testing Abraham to see if he would obey him?
Yeah, but I think there's more to it than that.
What do you mean?
Well, by being willing to give up the one and only son he was promised by God, Abraham was showing how much he loved and trusted God. Even Isaac, who could have fought his dad and escaped, instead trusted his dad and the promises God made about him. Both of them are examples to us about how much we should love God.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
For sure. And while you mull it over, I'll play the next program.
Mr. Jacobs, I have a question about the story of Abraham that we acted out.
Okay, Reuben, what's up?
It seems like, and I might be wrong, but it seems like God had to keep telling Abraham over and over that he was going to do great things through his son. Did Abraham keep forgetting or what?
He might have. Who knows? But I think what's happening here, when God repeats his promises over and over to Abraham, he's letting him know that he hasn't changed his mind. Sometimes it's easy to think that because we've made bad choices or because our circumstances change, that God's going to change too.
But we know from verses like Matthew 24:35 and Malachi 3:6 that no matter what happens on earth, God and his word will always be the same.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but that still kind of confuses me. Because God is loving and kind, and yet in this story he tells Abraham to sacrifice his son. I mean, we know God doesn't want anyone to kill their kids, and if I told anyone to kill their kids, it wouldn't be super nice of me.
You've got a point, Hope, but God is not like you and me. He has the authority and right to ask us to do anything.
But at the same time, because we know he's a good and loving God, we need to be like Abraham and trust that what he asks us to do is always best. Whether God tells us to do something easy or something hard, if we obey, he will bless us.
Okay, but isn't asking someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself a really horrible thing to do?
It is, Vivian. And that's why God did the same thing he asked Abraham to do. Because he loved the world so much, he sacrificed his only son.
Oh, yeah.
And what's more, that son, Jesus, was part of Abraham's family. And so the promise God made to Abraham about the world being blessed through Abraham's family was kept.
And because we become brothers and sisters when we believe in God's promises too, we become a part of Abraham's family of faith.
Ah, is that why we sing Father Abraham in church?
Travis, stop breaking the fourth wall.
Sorry, I just get it now, Joel.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, me too. Like, what happened to Ishmael and his mom? Who did Isaac marry? And how many kids did they have? Did anything else happen to Abraham that we didn't have time to talk about?
It's a pretty long story, and you can find all of those answers in the book of Genesis, starting in chapter 12.
Genesis, right. That's the first book of the Bible, I think.
Yep. Well, I gotta get going, everyone. Thanks for having me along for the ride.
Me too. Though maybe next time someone else can play the main character.
I'll keep that in mind. Does anybody want to switch the radio off before I forget?
I've got it.